Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld podcast episode number 120. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we are going to preview CMLL's 87th anniversary show, which will be available online. It will be streaming through the Ticketmaster Live service, their website. I believe the price is currently at $13 to $14, depending on when you order it. At this moment, I think it's around $13.60. I know there was a deal back in the past, but if you missed out on it, that's the price you're gonna have to pay for it. I think it was like $10 when it first announced all the prices, but $13-14. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird to be paying that amount, considering sometimes CML would either give it away for like way less than that, or sometimes just put it up for free on their own. But I think so far, based off of the fact that they haven't posted any of the other Friday shows onto their YouTube channel, I guess it's safe to say that that's not going to happen again. It might show up on some other Facebook page or YouTube channel, but it won't be coming up on CML's YouTube channel, at least as far as I know at this moment. They've been uploading these other the Televisa show. They started recording matches for Televisa, so those shows have been popping up on their YouTube channel. I think this Saturday show for Televisa will feature Atlantis Junior and Flyer defending the national tag team titles against Tiger and Hijo del Villano Tercero. So that should be the show that will be going up this weekend as far as what would be free. The Friday show, of course, you have to pay for it. For the most part, I've heard a lot of mixed reactions to it, to the shows. Some people have not been very excited about them. There's been a couple of matches that they've said have been okay or good. And at the same time, there's also been a lot of stuff. Like whenever I look through like Lucha Blog's reviews of it, it doesn't really make me miss watching CMLL, just because, okay can be pretty much anything from, it was there on my screen, and maybe I was doing something else that it looked okay. That's about it. Or it could be something that, it just wasn't worthy of being considered too bad, because we've kind of become a little bit desensitized as far as what we consider to be bad wrestling from all the years of watching CMLL. But, hopefully the anniversary should be good. So before I get to the anniversary, the lineup, I should mention how this came to be. Of course, as everyone knows, due to the pandemic, CML show will, at this point in time, the odds of it having fans in attendance are very slim. They were hoping to have at least a 30% capacity for the show, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, because Mexico, for the most part, the majority of Mexico is still at a very high level of COVID-19. So I don't think it's going to happen. I know there's some arenas that are starting to get a few fans on their shows, but there's a big difference between a small arena that seats may be less than 5,000 people compared to something that, there's 20 plus thousand capacity. So there's probably not going to be, 30% of that is way worse than, you're taking a far greater risk than something that's a smaller venue. So I don't think there's going to be any fans in attendance, which makes it even more of a, it's very weird. The little I've watched of empty arena shows, you have some promotions like AEW. I think WWE is also doing this now, where they have anybody who's not wrestling on the show, or maybe they have their match or whatever, they'll have them within the crowd just to make some noise. Actually, I think WWE, I think that's only NXT. I think the other WWE shows have followed what the NBA did, where they have virtual fans. They have a bunch of screens, and the fans are shown on there from their homes watching the shows. For the most part, with the NBA, there hasn't been a lot of issues. They've even had some celebrities and even ex NBA players. I think one of the games I was watching, they had Elgin Baylor in the crowd, an all-time great legend. Then in one of the more recent ones, they had Caron Butler in the crowd. He was drinking some beer. I think it was a Modelo. Might have been Corona, but it was in a can. That's the thing. If it's in a can, it's the odds of me knowing what it is a lot slimmer than knowing what it is in the bottle. But that was interesting. But with WWE, they had some fans that would put, like, one fan put a picture of Chris Benoit, the final photo of Chris Benoit before that tragedy happened. Then there was, I think, somebody that had some sort of questionable photo as well. So they had some issues. I think they figured they've been able to, like, resolve that. For the most part, like with the NBA, I haven't had really a lot of issues just because it's very different. Basketball and even baseball, where they have the cutouts in the crowd, it hasn't in the seats. It hasn't really bothered me. But with wrestling, since there's not a lot of noise, and that's something that has to exist in wrestling, it makes it a little bit harder for me to watch. And with Lucha Libre, it's going to be even weirder just because, unless it's like in a studio like what AAA did. It's very different from an empty arena to that. Although, I think we should all be used to it just because CML has had shows where there's been very few people in the crowd who don't even react to a lot of the stuff that's going on. About a month ago, CMLL made the announcement that they were going to have the anniversary and it was going to be a Champions Night type of concept. 7 titles would be defended on the show, and what they decided to do was, rather than them picking out who the matches and stuff, they decided to make each match, the challengers would be decided by fan vote on their website. And so they put together a list of different, challengers for each title. They made the announcement for 7 titles. And what ended up happening was, like, a lot of the people, I'm pretty sure a lot of the challengers that CML was expecting to win out and be the ones that would go up against the champions ended up backfiring on them, and suddenly you had all these different challengers that normally you wouldn't expect being on the show. Now they're going to be on it. I think the only one that really doesn't surprise anyone is really Microman, but everybody else was a bit of a surprise, just because there's certain wrestlers that CML favors. And their whole thing is that they like, and even Hechicero mentioned this on Informa a few times, where he said there's a lot of wrestlers that, they have the charisma, they have the look that the promoter or the programming department want, so they get pushed. And he wasn't just referring to CML; he referred to this in wrestling in general. Promoters and bookers, programming departments, writers, they all have a certain type of wrestler that they want to push, and that's the type of wrestler they want. Anybody else kind of like gets sent, undercard, doesn't get pushed, is a jobber or an enhancement talent, or not somebody that's going to get the same opportunities. So you don't really get to see those guys. And Hechicero said, like, a lot of these guys now, because fans are a little smarter to the business or have certain wrestlers that they like, these are the wrestlers that get accepted and get elevated. Very few do, actually, but these are the ones that the fans want to see. So now this was their way of kind of like deciding who would be in this. So there were a lot of surprises. For the most part, so not only were there a lot of surprises as far as who won and who will be challenging for titles, but CMLL also made the announcement that they would, the order of the matches for the anniversary would be based on fan votes. So say whoever got like the highest votes would end up being the main event. So the lineup ended up being a little bit different than most people would have expected. I'm pretty sure there was probably a little more of a, not just so much the fact that who was challenging, but who were the champions might have also had a little bit of a reason why these fans wanted that later on. Once they found out that that was part of the strategy of how the show was going to go on, I would guess that probably led to more people like, hey, Caristico, and I want to watch Caristico and Mystico, in the main event. Well, I guess I got to vote in this, even if I don't vote for Rey Cometa and Espirito Negro, I'm going to keep voting because this is the match I want to see in the main event. I want to see those guys in the main event. Fortunately for Rey Cometa and Espirito Negro, they ended up being the ones that won. But So I kind of thought that was what was also going on. I don't think there was like a, I don't think, I think there's a more of a greater following for Caristico than say a Chamuel or a Microman. Although Microman's popular, I don't think there's still a lot of people who are biased towards, you know, women or micro wrestlers headlining a show. So, you know, they're very specific of what they wanted. So the lineup, which of course this show will be held on September 25th. You could watch it, of course, as I mentioned, on Ticketmaster Live. Check, depending on when you order it, the price might change. One thing I should mention is that when you go on there, it's automatically listed as two tickets. What you do immediately is you go to one. If you only need to watch it on one, it'll only work on one device. So if you go with, I think that's the reason that they have it at two, where if you want to watch on two devices, you have it available on two. I don't know why you would want to do that, but I'm sure there's some people that might want to. But just go to one, and then you could then watch it on your whatever service, your laptop, your computer, your flat screen, however you want to watch it. The first match announced for the anniversary will be Chamuel defending the CMLL World Micros title against Microman. This is basically the big feud, the big rivalry of the Micros in CMLL, because basically these are the two best working Micros. Some might say they're the two only good working Micros, although Gallito deserves some credit for being pretty good. I kind of thought the voting kept going, you kind of noticed, because very early on, Microman had a very huge lead over the two other challengers, who were El Gallito and Guapito. And so as the weeks continued, I started noticing Gallito was slowly gaining on Microman. Fortunately, Microman voted for himself twice just to make sure he would be the one challenging Chamuel. I would not be surprised if this is one of the matches that has a title change. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised, just because you could see that happening. Although I kind of think it would make more sense to have Microman regain the title in front of a crowd and not in front of an empty arena. So I would go with, my pick is I'm going to go with Chamuel retaining the title, just because I have a feeling that it's possible that CML might think the same thing, where you want that big pop from the fans if Microman wins. As you recall, every time Microman wins, I think when he won the mask match, I'm thinking it was that, or it might have been another match where he got carried by one of the security guards, and he was getting high-fived and getting money from the crowd because of his performance. I think it might have been one of the Torneos Cibernéticos that he won as well, that he did that. So I kind of think that's what they would probably prefer. I don't think this would be the right time to have the title switch hands. But it's CMLL. Like I said, there's always a 50-50 shot that it could change. This seems to be one of the titles that could change in the anniversary. The second match will be, and this surprised me, the second match really surprised me that they are being placed here, because if this was CML's programming department, this would probably be the semi-main event. But it also has a very surprising group of challengers. Los Guerreros Laguneros, Ultimo Guerrero, Gran Guerrero, and Euphoria will be defending the CML World Trios titles against Hechicero, El Terrible, and Templario. Templario replaced Barbaro Carbonario, who suffered a fractured foot in his match against Felino a few weeks ago. Carbonario is gonna be out between 3 to 4 months, which really sucks for him. Although, I mean, honestly, right now, given the conditions of the pandemic and everything that's going on, and who knows when we're going to be back to having fans in attendance, maybe it's not the worst time to suffer an injury. It's not like it's going to affect his career right now, just because there's nothing's going on. Even like I said, the CML regular shows don't really look like they're really there's not a lot of effort be put into those shows or matches themselves by the wrestlers. I think the Guerreros Laguneros are going to retain the titles, just because I can't imagine a makeshift trio of Hechicero, Terrible, and Templario winning the titles. Templario is actually the fourth member of the Guerreros Laguneros. The fan vote for him, he won by a wide margin. I mean, it wasn't even close. The other two guys challenging were Dark Magic and I think Vangelis. Really kind of tells you the big discrepancy between this group. I'm surprised they didn't add Tiger or Hijo de Viano Tercero. Given Tiger is somebody who actually was part of Terrible, a trio with Terrible. And honestly, if you hear the one of the names that was being tossed around by fans for this trio, because every trio has to have a name, was THT, which is very similar to the old Terrible, Tejano, Rey Bucanero trio of TRT, which later, when Tejano left, Tiger joined the group and became the other T in that trio. I just don't see them winning. I could see this being a really good match, just because you really have Hechicero and Templario who are really trying to prove themselves and trying to, I don't think those guys go in thinking they want to have the best match possible, and so I kind of expect them to elevate the Laguneros, the girls Laguneros, who they do have a habit of like being very repetitive at times. Because they really wrestled a lot of the similar trios all the time. So I do expect this to be a good match. Terrible is another guy who always gives it his all. So, but I think the girls Laguneros are going to retain the titles. Already Hechicero is talking about wanting to team up with Mephisto as the Alquimistas del Infierno, the alchemists from hell, which is a far better name than THT. And also you have Mephisto is kind of wanting that. I think Mephisto also figures is starting to get worn out with the whole Hijos del Infierno trio. I think that trio has kind of run its course. It's been together for so long, and we'll talk about that as well, because they were one of the trios that was also one of the challengers, and they did very poor. They did not even come close. This was probably the vote that got this, and Bandito's fan vote were the ones that were by a far wide margin, which kind of, I mean, if there's any indication of what is going on with CMLL as far as what they need to change, I think that's something that they really should look at. I think the fact that the Hijos del Infierno didn't even come close kind of tells you that maybe it's time to change that group. Luciferno really never really caught on with the group, other than him having good matches with Dragon Lee. He really didn't do much, and Hefesto's really. I still think Hefesto, they should switch him over to becoming Panterita del Ring and teaming up with Blue Panther as a regular, veteran tag team, and let his sons go on their own. Just because I think that would be something fun, different in CMLL. But like I said, I think the girls Laguneros are like the likely ones to retain the titles here. The third match, this one was a surprise, and at one point, I think 2 weeks ago, Julio Cesar Rivera said this match was actually kind of close to possibly even being the main event of the show, which kind of tells me that it wasn't, just because it ended up being in third place. La Metallica will defend the Mexican national women's title against Lluvia. This really surprised me. I didn't expect Lluvia to win, but she did use her social media. I think that was one of the things we saw with this, was that she did really well at using her social media. She's a good-looking girl. She's wearing a mask. You're seeing her figure and everything, and the other women weren't really doing that. It's other than Estrellita, but honestly, I think the four women in this, Lluvia, Reina Isis, Jarochita, and Estrellita. Reina Isis was very close at one point to Lluvia. This was a very close. I think this might have been the closest voting, but Reina Isis ended up losing by about 5 percentage points. Jarochita, I think, would have been the ideal one to be in this match. I think she's by far and away starting to like surpass the other women in the division as the better worker in the promotion. She's probably never going to get a shot just because she's not connected. And now we know there was an LA Times article I think it was this week, where they talked about Ultimo Guerrero and his hamburger stand or whatever he's using to sell hamburgers again. It's called El Otro Nivel. R.I.P. What was it? Mr. Burger. R.I.P. Mr. Burger. Now it's the hamburguesas de Otro Nivel, Well, in the article, it was revealed that Yuvia is Ultimo Guerrero's wife. I think this might be his second wife. Second, I'm pretty sure it's the second wife because she's. They both have kids from a previous relationships. Yuvia's not that young. A lot of people don't realize. I think a lot of people think because Yuvia and Yedra come across looking young, but I think Yedra's probably in her mid 30s because she has a daughter that's 16 already. So they're not, and she's actually an amateur boxer as well. Yuvia's daughter. So it isn't it. This is kind of like, to me, like this is her big opportunity to shine. She's really never impressed me that much. I could see this being one of the matches where you see a title change, just because Metallica in her title defenses has very much underperformed. And I think the fact that CML revolves around, the women's division revolves around Dallas either being a champion or challenging. If Dallas doesn't get a match with Marcella, I wouldn't be shocked if she ends up challenging for this title at some point against Yuvia. So I could see that being another possibility of that happening. It kind of tells you how limited the women's division. And it's also a good thing that this match finishes third, just because I don't think this is I don't expect a lot from this match, honestly. Metallica has very much underperformed in her matches, and to be fair, she's in there with Dallas, who has also been very underwhelming in big matches as well. And like I said, Yuvia hasn't really been that impressive. So this is probably the match that, if it's anything remotely okay, that's already like a big surprise for me. But I think this is another match where I could see a title change. The fourth match is NGD, Sanson, Cuatrero, and Forastero defending the Mexican National Trios titles against the surprise challengers of Los Canceberos, Virus, Raziel, and Cancerbero. This really was a big momentum changer. I think very early on, the Dinastia Casas was in the lead. The four challenging trios were the Dinastia Casas, which was Felino, Tiger, and Nero Casas. Panthers trio with his two sons, and then a trio with Guerrero Maya Jr. I think it was Guerrero Maya Jr. I can't remember who his partners were. I think it was Stuka Jr. and I can't remember who else. But they were like the main challengers. And early on, the Cancerberos kind of looked like they were like tied with the Panthers, with the Casas family way ahead. Then suddenly they just fast tracked past the Casas family. Never looked back and ended up being the challengers, the surprise challengers. But to be fair, even like some of the guys who are they had Blue Panther Jr. and the Panther on Informa, and I think one of the Casas family members, I think it was Nero Casas, and they were all kind of rooting for the Cancerberos to get a shot, just because they kind of thought Virus and those guys deserved it. This will actually be Raciel and Cancerberos' first anniversary show, which tells you like how long they've been around. They've been in the promotion for so long, and this is really their first opportunity. It's going to be a big moment for them. Hopefully they bring their A games, because they've had some moments where they really haven't looked very good. It's kind of sucks, because I think 5 years ago, if this would have happened, this would have been huge for them. But now it's kind of like they've gotten older. They're just not the same level of wrestlers as they were back then. And so, but I think NGD is going to end up winning. Virus is great no matter what, honestly. Virus in his sleep will have a great match. So I could see this being a good match, but I don't see the Cancerberos winning the titles at all. But it's going to be fun, and it's kind of cool to see these guys in a big match. I think that's one of the things with this show, is that there's certain guys that you would never have gotten an opportunity to see in an anniversary getting an opportunity because of the fan voting. So it's probably one of the positives of the pandemic, honestly. The fifth match will be Marcella defending the CMLL World Women's title. The fan vote challenger was the one that won was Princesa Suhei. So we were expecting Princesa Suhei versus Marcella. Princesa Suhei appeared on CMLL Informa on Wednesday afternoon and revealed that early Wednesday morning she received her test results for her COVID-19 test, and they were revealed to be positive. So she will not be able to wrestle on the anniversary show. She's going to have to be quarantined for 14 days. She says she's asymptomatic right now, so that's good. But she's going to be quarantined in Monterrey. She mentioned that she had taken three COVID-19 tests, two in Mexico City. I guess this was while she was working TV tapings for CMLL, and she had come out negative those two times. And then when she returned to Monterrey, she took a COVID-19 test and found out that she was positive. So she will not be able to wrestle on the show. So now that puts CMLL in a bit of a bind. They could go the route that a lot of fans that are kind of understanding of what this is are okay with this, that they should give it to the second place vote getter, which would be Dallas. But then you have a lot of fans who are kind of against the whole idea of having Dallas, get, another opportunity for a title. So, there's a lot of people that are kind of wanting them to do another revote, which I kind of think is a little too late to do that now. I mean, it's not too late because you have a couple of days, so you could always just go, we'll see if she wins again. Dallas gets the opportunity. I mean, you could throw in Reina Isis and Harochita with Amapola and Dallas and just to see what would happen. But honestly, I get the feeling, I think the best solution would be just to not have that title match on the show and just let Marcella defend the title against Princesa Suhei at a later date. It sucks for Marcella, but I think this happened to her recently as well. I think she was going to have a title match on a show, and she couldn't do it because of a leg injury. So they just rescheduled the match to a later date. I think it's either going to be Dallas or they're going to reschedule the match. So that's really the solution. I don't really, if Dallas gets the match, she's probably going to win the title. If Dallas doesn't get the match, well, we don't have to worry about this. But that's very unfortunate for Princesa Suhei, then, since this was probably going to be one of the higher profile women's matches, just because women's matches usually get placed second or third on cards, and this being placed fifth on an anniversary show kind of seemed like it still wasn't as high as what you would hope. Like, a lot of fans who want a women's match to headline a big show at some point. The one match I think that could have done that and they didn't was the Zeuxis Princesa Suhei mask match. So honestly, if that match couldn't make it, I don't see anything right now that could possibly make a main event worthy women's match in CMLL. So other than this one that could have happened, and it didn't. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that match. Hopefully I hope they just reschedule it, because I don't think I could sit through two women's matches on an anniversary show with no fans in attendance to hear them make noise. The sixth match will be Volador Jr. defending the NWA World Historic Welterweight title against Bandito. I'm hoping this will be good. I don't see there being a title change in this match. Unless they really want to have a title change at the top of the card, then possibly this could happen, just because Volador Jr. probably will win a trios title or a tag team title or another title at some point, just because there's so many titles in CMLL. I could see that happening. Bandito has been saying a lot of the right things, even though I don't think he necessarily means them. Talking about how he's very much into being part of CMLL. He even went on Informant and said that Volador Jr. is a good guy in the locker room, which made me laugh, just because they have a bit of a history of not getting along in the past. I don't really see that. I think this could be a good match, just because they've had good matches in the past. And Bandito's really good. But at the same time, Volador Jr. has kind of had some very, his performances, from what people have said, haven't been very good of late. But But it's an anniversary show. I'm sure these guys are going to want to give it their all. So I would expect this to be probably pretty good. A lot of the people who don't like Volador Jr., his detractors, are probably not going to be that thrilled about it anyway. So they're going to frown upon it anyway. So, but I expect it to be a good match either way, just because Bandito's going to come in and wanted to have a good match, and Volador Jr. is going to at least try against him. I think when you have regular Friday shows with trios matches, I mean, there's only so much these guys are going to do anyways. The final match, the main event, shocking as it may sound, is Caristico and Mystico defending the CMLL World Tag Team titles against Rey Cometa and Espiritu Negro. This is a shocking turn event. I was going to say shocking main event. It is a shocking main event and shocking turn of events. I think if you look at the 4 teams that were listed, I think what CMLL wanted was the Chavez brothers challenging, or that Diamante Azul. I think it was Diamante Azul and Stuka that were the tag team, or that team challenging. Although I don't think they really wanted that tag team as a challenger. More so the Chavez brothers. But it really surprised everyone to see Rey Cometa and Espiritu Negro as the challengers, which shouldn't surprise CMLL, because honestly, on Informa and if you go on social media and all this, people were and on interviews that these guys were doing, a lot of people were really getting into the Atrapasueños tag team, the Dreamcatchers tag team of Rey Cometa and Espiritu Negro. They really liked it. I think that was really something that was going to be that was going to catch on. And so I say it's surprising just because nobody expected Espiritu Negro and Rey Cometa being in. First of all, even being on an anniversary show is shocking, especially for Espiritu Negro. But to be the main event, very surprising just from them being involved. But the fact that it's Caristico and Mystico that they were going to wrestle, you kind of expected this to be the main event because Caristico and Mystico's popularity. I expect this to be a good match. Honestly, I think Rey Cometa and Espiritu Negro are going to want to prove that they belong. Especially Rey Cometa. He's somebody that I've always felt is underrated and somebody who belongs higher on CMLL cards. I think he's, as far as technicals, he's somebody that should be in that mix of guys that gets put into those dream teams trios of with Volador Jr. and Mystico, Caristico, Dragon Lee back then, Valiente. Rey Cometa is really good. I've always wanted a Rey Cometa Nero Casas match. They never did it. People, even the CMLL guys really respect Rey Cometa as a good worker. He's very he's really good. I mean, I don't know why he's never been pushed. There's this scary thing with Rey Cometa where his tag partners, like his brother and his ex-partner, are way low on the card. And when they would talk about wanting to reunite and team with Rey Cometa, you just knew that the thing is, Rey Cometa the last couple years has been what, 3rd or 4th match, sometimes a semi-main event, sometimes main event fill-in for somebody who doesn't show up. But those guys like Pegaso and Espiritu Negro are basically opening and second match. Those guys are going to get elevated, and Rey Cometa would have to that did not go well with Tiger. I mean, if you look at what Tiger did, he wanted to team up with his brother Puma King, and Tiger was with TRT at the point at that time before he decided to team up with his brother. But Tiger was in what, semi-main events, went and teamed up with Puma King, and they were stuck in 2nd, 3rd matches for since then. So Tiger's still stuck in that group. So it makes sense for Rey. I mean, I know that there's a bit of a excitement for that, but it would have been a huge gamble for Rey Cometa to actually totally agree to do that. And he was starting to accept it with his brother Espiritu Negro, but I think there was a lot of us who were fearful that oh, this is Rey Cometa kind of pretty much going from 3rd or 4th match to 2nd and opening match. He wasn't going to drop to his opening match. I'm pretty sure it would have been second and 3rd match, but he would never been in a 4th or semi-main event. But then look at this, anniversary, if they're able to perform well, I don't know if that necessarily means that suddenly they're going to get pushed, placed in main events more frequently. But I think this kind of opens the eyes for some in CMLL that maybe they were wrong about these guys. To be fair with CMLL, they're very wrong on a lot of guys. I don't get how they could like easily put Okumura or Dark Magic high on cards, but like a guy with talent like Reiko Meta or Super Astro Jr. or somebody who's far, far superior to these guys, they didn't do anything about that. I mean, they didn't really make an effort to elevate them. So with that, we're getting Reiko Meta and Espiritu Negro challenging for the CML World Tag Team titles. I do look forward to that match. I don't know how it's going to turn out just because you do have like, each team has a weaker partner. To be fair, I mean, like Caristico is way better than Mystico and Reiko Meta is way better than Espiritu Negro. So I think that's the one negative. The one drawback is that they haven't been a regular tag team for very long. They've been preparing them, at least having them in tag matches leading up to it. So they're getting some familiarity as far as being a team. Just because they're brothers doesn't mean they're automatically going to be a good tag team. Because I mean, they've very rarely teamed up in CMLL or anywhere really. So this is going to be something very different. I think the entire show itself looks like it's going to be good as far as possibly as good as it possibly could be, given the circumstances of there being no fans in attendance, and hopefully the stream doesn't die on everyone. The last show did have a streaming technical issue. If that happens again, especially at the price that it's going to be, it makes it a little hard to just imagine people being very pleased about it. I don't know. I think looking through it, I think the one, like I said, the one likely scenario, I think the two title changes. I do think we're gonna have title changes, and I think the two likeliest title changes are gonna be the women's national title and possibly I would say probably Volador Jr. dropping the title to Bandito, or I think those are the two likeliest title changes. I can't really see the other matches having guys who are gonna win the titles, just because you have and also the Microman obviously possibly winning the title then. Although, like I said, I think they really should wait out on Microman getting the title once there's some normalcy as in this world. Hopefully we do reach that point at some point sooner rather than later. But I don't see other challengers winning titles. Just because it just seems so like I said, I don't think CML was expecting these guys to be the challengers. It's kind of cool that so many of the guys that are going to be in this are people that we wouldn't have imagined being on it. Raciel, Cancerbero, Reiko Meta, Espiritu Negro, even someone like Yuvia. Although now I think that's going to change a little bit, just because people know that her relationship, who she's in a relationship with. Although I don't think it's really helped, because I don't think they just got married all of a sudden. They've probably been married for a while. It's just been kept quiet for a long time. But I think if there's, I would think if there's also the other one, if Marcella defends against Dallas, I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas wins the title. But if that title match gets scrapped, I don't see that. But I think the two women's matches, if that happens, those are the two likeliest title changes. And then, of course, the micros. And I would think Bandito versus Volador Jr. possibly being one of the matches that could change, that could see a title change hands. Just because, like I said, Volador Jr. always ends up being in a trio, and they'll end up challenging one of these other trios, or in a tag match, or there's so many titles in CML that he'll find a way to get another title. I'm surprised he doesn't have a title already, another one. But should be a fun show. I probably will order it. I didn't order the other shows just because I couldn't see myself paying $5 to watch a regular CMLL show, considering even like going back to probably late last year, they really haven't had really good Friday shows of late. I think it's going to be interesting if they start doing shows like that. If this becomes a norm, it's going to be very difficult for... I don't know if they're going to be able to do this. I hope once they start having fans attend shows, they can stop doing the whole and just start streaming it on YouTube or Claro Sports, just because I can't imagine paying for a Friday show, honestly. So that's basically the anniversary show. Other news, there's been some passings in the last several weeks and months. Of course, we lost Herodes a couple of several weeks ago. I think he died from complications of diabetes. One of the top stars of the lucha libre in the 80s and early 90s. Very good bump taker. I think he really started making a name for himself in late 78, 79. Really when he started becoming one of the top heavyweights in Mexico. One of the guys who, because he wrestled a lot in northern Mexico, and one of the things with when a lot of the guys who work in northern Mexico, they would work a lot in the border towns like in Texas and Arizona and other parts of western United States. He would work with a lot of American wrestlers, so he was really one of the guys that got to work with whenever a foreigner or an American wrestler would wrestle in Mexico, because he was already experienced in wrestling that type of a different type of style. He was the guy that would get those guys. He worked with Kevin Von Erich a lot when Kevin would work in Mexico and guys like that. As he got older, I mean, he started to started to slow down a bit. He kept going at it. Really, he was pretty much in poor health. I think by the late 2000s, I would say he was already in poor health. So he's been dealing with a lot of health issues brought in from years in the wrestling ring, all the bumps and bruises, and also from diabetes. So he passed away. Also passing away was Armando Gaitan, El Mucha Crema, a legendary CMLL ring announcer, not only in CML, but he also worked AAA and independent shows. One of the all-time great ring announcers in Mexico. He was best known for being able. He got the nickname Mucha Crema because he used to do these over-the-top ring introductions for the wrestlers, and he was very. He did a fantastic job. Also, his voice was great. He also appeared on the movie Nacho Libre, doing the ring announcing for that. Really one of the terrific, great all time. I think he's one of those guys. One of the people that as lucha fans, he's one of the people that you'll remember. Yeah, I remember that guy. He was, just from his ring introductions were so great. We also saw the passing of Taboo. Really difficult year for the family, the Escobedo family. Taboo was the younger brother of La Parca, who passed away in January, the AAA La Parca. And so he wrestled for a bit in AAA as part of Cibernéticos Bizarros. Very difficult year for that family to lose to lose two family members like that, and dealing with the whole pandemic and all this other crap that's going on. Very sad. So that's about it for this episode. Just wanted to do a preview for the CML 87th anniversary show. We'll be doing another show after that, recapping the show and giving out any other news and information that's going on in the world of Lucha Libre, which is not a whole hell of a lot, other than maybe a lot of indie promotions that are actually running shows in Mexico are finally starting to do streaming, going online and streaming, be it through Mas Lucha's YouTube channel. I don't think they've really been putting a lot of stuff up on their new streaming service. I haven't seen it really announced that often, and I've seen a lot of DTU streaming stuff on, I think, Facebook, and Vanguardia, and now Lucha Memes have joined up with IWTV, Independent Wrestling Television. I think that's what it stands for, but it's IWTV. It was called something else back when it first started, but they're now Powerbomb TV. Now it's IWTV. It's pretty much Lucha Memes finally making their way on there. What great timing to have their shows with empty arenas and not able to use CMLL talent on their shows. So you're really getting a very independent type of show, which I don't know. I think they really made a mistake not starting on streaming services at least 2 years earlier, when they were bringing in a lot of the CMLL guys and a lot of the top indie guys. Right now, they're not getting a lot of people, so it's more of a word of mouth type of thing where a lot of the people, plus a lot of the hardcore fans are not big fans of the promoter, the Lucha Memes promoter, so they're not very high on him. So you don't get a lot of plugs for his stuff as well, just because he's a bit of a jerk, to say the least. And that's not even just from his tweets and what he writes and talking about how great he is. It's from people who have been around him, have actually they don't speak very highly of him as far as a person. As a promoter, they kind of do speak, they do, and matchmaker, booker, whatever you want to call it, they do say good things about him, but as a person, they're not very high on him as far as his attitude. It's not so much the other stuff, it's more of his attitude than anything else. If there's any other news besides the anniversary show, we'll have a podcast. If not, it'll just be about the anniversary and just our thoughts on the show. Hopefully, I'll even say, hopefully we'll have the show, because for all we know, the stream, it being a lucha show being streamed, there might be some sort of technical issue and it might not even work. So who knows? So hope everybody stays safe, and we'll talk to you everyone very soon. So long.